Welcome. Recently, both the House and the Senate have passed versions of the Farm Bill, and now those versions of the Farm Bill are going to be heading to a conference committee where they are going to work out differences. The two bills, the House bill and the Senate bill, have versions of ARC-County and PLC in those bills. Those versions of ARC-County and PLC differ between those two bills, and in this video, I'm going to describe the differences. In particular, what I'm going to do is give you an overall summary of the choices that would exist if these two bills merged and passed, and then I'm going to give an example of each ARC-County and PLC program in the House and the Senate version, and I'm going to do that for both corn and soybeans. The dynamics of the ARC-County and PLC will differ between corn and soybeans, as we'll see as we move through this video. Overall, as far as the basics of the program, it will be the same as it has been in the 2014 bill. Farmers and landowners will make decisions for each FSA farm. This time around, base acres will not change. There isn't an opportunity to update base acres. Each FSA farm has corn acres, soybean acres, and other program crop acres, and that is what payments are made based on. Those don't have to bear a relationship to planted acres currently planted. Those base acres will not change. Neither will PLC or yields, or the yields that are used to find PLC payments. Those were allowed to be updated when the 2014 Farm Bill came into existence, but are not going to be allowed to be updated in the 2018 Farm Bill as those two bills currently stand. There is some updating of drought-stricken areas, but that won't have an impact on Midwest farms. The choice then will be between ARC-County and PLC for each program crop on each FSA farm, given that ARC-IC was not chosen for that farm. Here again, there's a bit of a difference between the two bills. House bill allows Senate bill allows ARC-IC, whereas the House bill eliminates ARC-IC. Now I'm going to give an example of the four alternatives for corn, and we're going to do this from a historical perspective first, and then we'll go forward through time using CBO scores. The example county that I'm going to give it for is DeKalb County, Illinois, and again we're going to begin with corn. There are four alternatives. House has their ARC-County version, which is the same as the 2014 Farm Bill, and they have a PLC version, which they have modified and have increased the effective reference price, which will increase the expected payments from PLC. The Senate has an ARC-County version, and that is a modified from the 2014 Farm Bill, and it increases expected payments because it does two things. It increases the benchmark yield by a trend adjustment, and it also places a floor on the yield used in calculating the benchmark yield at 75% of the T yield. So ARC-County in the Senate version will have higher expected payments usually than that in the House. The PLC version in the Senate is the same as in the House. I'm going to again go through each one of these, beginning with ARC-County, and we'll do the House version, which is the same as the currently existing version. The example that I'm giving is again for DeKalb County, Illinois. The screenshot that you're seeing here is actually from our FAST tool, which is a spreadsheet tool, which you can download from FarmDoc. These are actual payments here from ARC-County for 2014 through 2016. We're still projecting for 2017 and 2018, but it's pretty clear for at least ARC-County in 2017 that those payments are going to be zero, and it's highly likely that those payments are going to be zero in 2018. In 2014, we had at a $62 payment from ARC County, and you can find that by comparing revenue to our guarantee. Our guarantee here was $796, which is found by taking our benchmark yield, 175 in that year, 529, multiplying it by 529, the benchmark price, times 0.86. The benchmark, this guarantee is then compared to harvest revenue, or revenue from the county, which is a yield, 194, 370. When that's less than the guarantee, there's a payment, and that payment will equal the difference between the guarantee. It will be multiplied by 0.85, and then in the years in which we've had payments, it was reduced by a sequester amount of 6.8%. Yields, the benchmark yield is a 5-year average of the 5 previous yields. Olympic average throughout the high and the low. Benchmark price is Olympic average of the 5 previous prices. And those 5 previous prices, again, it's Olympic average. And if we have a market year average price below 370, or the reference price is used in the calculation, and that happened in 2009. We replaced that 355 with the 370. So as we're going through time, the benchmark yield and benchmark prices will change. The big thing that happened during this farm bill is the benchmark prices declined because we had higher prices during the earlier period, and then those prices came down. That's the basics of ARC County, and that would be the House version. And as you can see here, for DeKalb County, we had a $62 payment in 2014, $78 in 2015, $32 in 2016, and it's highly likely that there's zeros in 2017 and 2018, average of $34 per acre. Base acre, by the way, so this is paid on a base acre basis. Moving forward into the Senate version, so the House version is what we had currently, and that would be, if the House version passed, that would be a continuation of it. The Senate version makes 2 modifications to that, and here again we're back to our 2014 Farm Bill. What the Senate version does is modify this benchmark price. And it makes 2 modifications. One is that if any of these yields are below 75% of the T yield, 75% of the T yield is used. Probably more importantly is that there's a trend adjustment. And each one of these yields will be adjusted up by trend. We don't know exactly how they're going to do that. The way we assumed that they would do it would be to take the RMA yield, trend adjusted yield, which is 1.74, and simple math of this, if you want to adjust each one of these up, if you multiply it by that 3, it's roughly a 5 bushel increase. So what we would see is each one of these benchmark yields going up by roughly 5 bushels. 175 would go to 180, 186 to 191, so on and so forth. Higher benchmark yield then will increase the guarantee, which then has the potential to increase the ARC County payment. The way this would have worked if we had this, if FSA would use the RMA trend yields, here's what those payments would look like. For DeKalb County in Illinois, our $62 payment in 2014 would go to $83. $78 would go to $94, $32 would go to $46. However, 2017 and 2018 would not make payments, largely because benchmark prices are coming down. So these benchmark prices are coming down, and those benchmark prices aren't going to counter that 5 bushel increase in benchmark yield. So that's the comparison between the House and the Senate version's ARC. Again, the Senate version of ARC would include a benchmark yield adjustment in its calculation, as well as a 75% of T yield replacement. Moving on to PLC. PLC payments are given here. PLC payments are easier to describe than ARC County. And in this case, ARC County payments will be 0.932. The 0.932 is our sequester amount. It's the adjustment for sequester, so we're taking into consideration our sequester. We get paid on 85% of base acres. Each FSA farm will have a PLC yield. We're using 145 PLC yield in this calculation, and that 145 happens to be the average for DeKalb County. And this program will make a payment if 370, the reference price. If the market year average price is below that, a payment will occur. It will generally be the difference between those times PLCL 0.85.932. This is limited to 195, so if the market year average price is lower than 195, they'll use 195 in the calculations. Those would have resulted in payments of $10, $39, and right now this is still a projection, but $34 for 2017. That's given that the market year average price turns out to be $340. Again, in 2018, we're saying 0 here, 380. If that got below 370, that 0 would increase. That's PLC. That's what's in the Senate version. And again, those would be the payments. Over this time period, we are projecting ARC County to make $17 payments. House version would have made $34. So selecting House version of ARC, or what was 2014, is still projected to make larger payments than the Senate PLC version. The House PLC version modifies the Senate version, and what it does is it adds an effective reference price. So rather than using the reference price in its calculation, which is $370 for the Senate version or the current version, the reference price is $370. The House version calculates an effective reference price. That effective reference price will never be below $370, and it has the opportunity to be above $370. The way it is calculated is first you calculate a 5-year Olympic average of prices and multiply it by 0.85. So take 0.85 to the 5 times the 5-year Olympic average of those prices, and then see if that's greater than 370, you will have a greater reference price, but this reference price is capped to be 426 or 1.15 times the 370 reference price. So had this House version existed, the reference price would have been through 426 in 2014, 426 in 2015, 407 in 2016, and then we're back to the reference prices currently. The effective reference price this mechanism will result in a higher effective reference price than the reference price if two market year averages prices during the previous 5 years are above 435. And that 435 is just found by taking 370 divided by 0.85, or the 85% of the Olympic average. There has to be two of those. One, because one would get thrown out in the Olympic average. So you have to have at least two. And also what you also have to remember is that this is the condition that the effective price, and we should really use may be above, because if we have some of those references prices below 370, it could occur that the Olympic 5-year average would not be above it. This is important, 435, because going forward, we're not suspecting that we'll see too many market year average prices above that. Given that, here's what the House PLC version would have projected to be made paid. Senate, 0. It would have made a payment of $64 in 2014, $75 in 2015, 82 in 2016, and $34 in 2017 for a total of $51 per acre. That gives a comparison, a historical comparison of the four alternatives. Note that if the House PLC version had existed, it would have been a very tough call to make a decision between the House PLC and the ARC County versions. Now we want to look a little bit forward-looking. That's a historical, gives us a feel for how the four programs would work. Moving forward, we're in a totally different price environment for these, and these alternatives are going to perform differently moving forward. In particular, we have prices projected to be close to the reference price. CBO is using prices close to the reference price in making its forward projections, and that's roughly $3.70. Those prices vary a little bit by year, but what that would cause is the benchmark price to come down to that reference price. So ARC County will trigger based on a reference price at $3.70. And that's roughly the same, or is the same price as PLC. CBO made projections of ARC County and PLC payments this spring for the current programs. They came out with a projection of $11 in 2019 for ARC County, and that would be a national number, so national average number, and that compares to $38 for PLC. In an environment where we have prices close to the reference price, ARC County will pay less than PLC, and that's where the environment we're in. So just as a simple example, ARC County's reference price is $3.70. You have to have a revenue below 86% of that. So take 86% of $3.70, and if the benchmark yield and actual yield equal each other, we would have to have a price close to $3.20 before we would trigger payments. And PLC would be making payments throughout that. So these estimates, ARC County is expected to make payments of $9 over the projected price life of the Farm Bill from 2019 to 2023. That compares to $29 for PLC. That PLC version is for the Senate version. The House version would not be much higher than the projected payments because remember, we have to have prices above 85% of are roughly 430 above that before we trigger a higher effective reference price. That, given the prices that we're looking at, is not likely. The Senate version of ARC County would increase the ARC County projections here from $9 to something like $11 or $12. Again, it would increase it, but given those numbers, and if you think that farmers and landowners will make these decisions based on expected payments from the program, we are likely to see a shift to PLC unless something happens to ARC County in the conference committee. Some of the things that could happen to ARC County is an increase in coverage level. So increase that coverage level from 0.86 to something 0.9 more higher. Or another alternative is to increase the lowest price in the benchmark. So rather than flooring prices moving into the benchmark price at $3.70, do something higher. Perhaps you could do something like $4.35, and that number would get you close. Then the 0.85 times $4.35 would get close to prices below the reference price, triggering payments. Now I'm going to give an example for soybeans, historical example for first, and then looking forward. We're going to do this for DeKalb County, Illinois. Again, beginning with ARC County, the House version or the current version. For soybeans in DeKalb County, we have seen a couple of payments under ARC County, a $52 payment in 2015, and we're projecting a $7 payment in 2017. ARC County works exactly like like it did for corn. Our guarantee is our benchmark yield times our benchmark price times 0.86 to give our guarantee. Whenever county revenue, which equals 60 bushels in this case, times 1010 is below that guarantee, we will get a payment. That payment will equal the shortfall, capped at 10% of the benchmark yield times benchmark price. That shortfall times 0.85 reduced by our sequester amount. If you want to see the detail behind those calculations, go into the FAST section or look at the July 21st Farm Doc Daily article. Again, similar to corn, we've seen benchmark prices for soybeans decrease. And again, that's because we've had some higher prices in the earlier years, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, all well above 10. They are now being replaced by prices below 10. That gives us an average payment over the life of the Farm Bill, 2014 Farm Bill of $12. Again, $12 for the House current version. Senate version, we would expect to see higher payments, and again, that would be because these benchmark yields here are going to go up. Those benchmark yields are going to go up by about 1.41 bushel, and that happens to be our RMA trend increase times 3. Whether FSA will use that method or not, we'll have to wait and see if this bill passed. But 1.41, so the 55 bushels would go up, and that would trigger higher payments. Those higher payments would be $52 to $58 in 2015. We're actually hitting the cap in that year. 2017, we would have seen a substantial increase from $7 to $53. Over the 2014-2018 life, we would have saw a difference of $12 versus $22 under these two ARC County versions. Senate PLC did not make any payments. We did not have any market year average prices here below our 840 reference price. So we didn't see payments for ARC County. 0, so that's pretty easy. House PLC version. Again, the House PLC version has an effective reference price. That effective reference price for soybeans will be, again, 85% of the 5-year Olympic average here. It can't go below 840, and it can't go above 966 or 1.15 times our 840 reference price. We see those hitting in 2014, 15, 16, 2017, and then we're back to the reference price in 2018. Again, for this effective reference price to be above our reference price, we have to have at least 2 prices above 988. Again, one price wouldn't do it because it would get kicked out because of the Olympic average, so 2 in there above 988 to trigger payment above that. House PLC would have made larger payments, $26 in 2015, $7 in 2016, total $7 over the life of the Farm Bill. That gives you a feel for the comparison between the House and PLC version historically. Moving forward, we again have lower prices. CBO is using projections here, that green line, something when they made their projections 970, 70-ish going forward. Whether or not that will be the case with tariffs, etc., is a good question. If we would see that lower, we would see a difference here. But you can see that the reference price, or the market year average price, is causing the reference price, or benchmark price, to come down. It's still not getting to the reference price because those prices are above the reference price. That's going to cause projections to be a bit different than corn for ARC and PLC. CBO projected ARC County to make an average $11 over the 5 years versus PLC of $2. One thing that I would mention about this projection is that this $2 was made with 970-ish prices, and we may be in a different price environment. If that goes down closer to 9, these numbers would go up, and the comparison between ARC County and PLC would become much closer. Summary for soybeans is, if you're looking at these payments, they're much smaller than they are for corn, and the expected payments are closer for ARC County and PLC. It'd be a tougher choice to make between ARC County and PLC for soybeans than it would be for corn. That gives you an overview on the impacts. We will see what the conference committee comes out with as far as ARC County and PLC. Again, the two versions of ARC County that they would have would cause ARC County probably not to be competitive with PLC from a expected payment standpoint on corn, more so on soybeans. As we move through time, we'll see what those modifications result, and we will keep you informed. Thank you for listening today.